And as we clamber aboard the rusty Massey Ferguson and clatter drunkenly towards the AFL Rural Round, whatever that is, welcome once again to the Titus and Sergio Variety Hour podcast. I'm Sergio Paradise, and this bloke here, it's Titus O'Reilly.
I'm very excited about rural round because people from the country are just better people than the godless city types.
I think the rural round, I think it's when AFL executives belt people but only do it outside the metropolitan area.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Now, we have a very special guest, Titus. Our guest this week, well, check out this for a set list as either star, writer, creator or director. The D-Generation, The Late Show, Frontline, The Castle, The Dish, Thank God You're Here, The Panel, Have You Been Paying Attention, All Aussie Adventures with Russell Coight and The Hollow Men, just to name a few. He's about to reappear on the Logie Award-winning Utopia as the head of the National Building Authority. Please make him welcome the great man, Rob Sitch.
Thanks, Serge. Thanks, Titus. I was about to say, who pulled out that I got invited? That's normally the way.
I was reading last night as getting ready for this. It said in an article about you that you were the 39th most important person in Australian television history, and I desperately searched for the original list of who was above you, but I couldn't find it.
That was the first. I was told that once. That was the first question I asked. Who was 38?
Who's 38?
Something like Bindi Irwin or something.
39 is such a weird number.
Yeah,
you kind of like,
39, it's not. Like when you get drafted, what do you reckon? 32 and afterwards, there's very few happy stories after 30.
Yeah, there's the first round, and you can probably get through to the second round, like 36, 37. Once you're entering into third round or fourth round, people will be surprised if you actually have a career out of that.
No, it's good. It's expectation settings, because if you're one, you got to be great.
Yeah.
I mean, look at when it happened to Trengove and Scully at Melbourne, the expectation's so high. Yeah. But you get picked anywhere after even 20.
That's right. At 39, you get handed a sub-vest as well. It's not
Now, Rob, you're a Melbourne supporter like Serge and
Very
I.
much, yeah.
And is that a lifelong affliction?
No, it is. It is. It's a family connection. My dad's one sort of Forrest Gump moment in football was that he arrived there as a teenager in 1939, and just as Melbourne embarked on 3 premierships, try getting into that side, and then he goes, "Don't worry, I've got years ahead of me." And then Hitler invaded Poland.
Everyone conspired against it.
Another reason not to like that Hitler guy.
Yeah. So the funny thing was, I had to give a speech on this the other day. Is my dad was at Melbourne with Norm Smith.
Yeah, right.
And so he was sort of around a whole bunch of people. He was there with Ron Brassey Senior, the father.
Okay.
And so I don't think any of them would have remembered him. He was 17 at the time or 18 at the time. So it's I sort of know all the names by the fact that sort of Dad played in the reserves.
So how long was he there for till the war swept it away?
Until I think the nail in the coffin was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I think that I think they all thought the appeasement was going to work for 18 months, and then Darwin shut things down, and so he went off. When he came back, you forget that people's sporting careers. He was 26, 20. He's done. He went to the VFA last couple of games and said, "I don't need my head kicked in anymore." Yeah, that was it. They were done. Cricketers often.
Yeah, but football, you're right. They, and more often than not, they would retire in their early 20s because they needed to make a living. They like my dad, who never actually made AFL level, but fairly close to it. He retired at 22 or 23 when I was born because he had to get a job. Absolutely. To support his family.
Yeah.
And it was no money playing, VFA football in those days.
And also, the prospect of sort of getting yelled at by, Dennis Pagan on a cold or his equivalent in 1940.
Back then.
I don't think he was up for it.
Fair enough.
And your dad, did he fly planes?
He was in the RAAF. So he was, but in the Pacific Theatre.
Right.
So he flew in a plane called the Beaufort, and it was a bomber. And 4 people crew, but they lost as many in training because it was a tricky plane to fly, just keep airborne,
which is not what you look for in a plane.
Not what, you want reliability. I think
flying is a key,
especially when that Darwin thing had just happened.
Yeah, so that was, but then they would do 2 active tours, and then they'd come out and they'd teach. You know, they had to. You know, they're 24 and they were, you know, they were. It's amazing. They're 26. They were back, you know, doing a public service job.
Yeah.
Looking for all the world like an intern. Yeah. But it was a fun
Their life experience.
Yeah,
They were old fast. It was all like I remember reading some of the stuff around. You know, Keith Miller famously during the war,
story,
and you know, saying cricket wasn't pressure because you know having a German up your ass is
that's pressure.
And I remember they had a test 2 weeks after the European war ended in London, and one of Australia's bowlers had been in a concentration camp for years up until about 3 weeks before he bowled for Australia, and was so weak he had to stop and have sugar drinks in between overs. And I look at I look at that now, and I look at all what we all bang on about, and you know we all complain if Netflix is down for half an hour, everyone's like, you know, this is the end of the world. But that's what they were like back then.
I love that. My favourite story from making the castle was we actually shot at that house that is by the runway. Yeah. And one day during lunchtime, some old warbirds were coming down, and I was going, "Hey, what's that? That's a..." And then behind me, that beautiful timbered voice of Bud Tingle goes, "Oh, it's a Harvard." And it's "Oh, we're away." And I go, "Oh, I didn't know you were interested in aviation. A little, not so much now." And I go, "How did you come to?" And during the war, and I kept pressing, and then the killer statement. I flew Spitfires during the war.
That phrase "during the war" had been used by so many, and as we say, old men from that era, without explaining it beyond that. But old Bud Tingle, he flew Spitfires. I mean, you got to know what you're doing to be doing that.
You do. Reconnaissance. He told a really great story though. The plane that Keith Miller flew, he had to. Like on a transfer flights, and they were getting so many planes by the end of the war, they had to move them around. And it was the that's that twin engine thing that Keith Miller went like a rocket, and he hopped in it one day and hadn't been sort of got his verification to fly. Didn't know how to land it, and his co-pilot leant across to him and said, "Would it help if I leant out the window and told you how far you're off the ground?" And Bud said, "Oh, that'd be wonderful."
That'd be handy.
Keith Miller famously broke off from a bombing raid on the way home to fly over. I think it was Beethoven's hometown.
It was it was a composer to see where he was born,
which I just love. I love that.
I mean, that is. You're great. I mean, as cliched as it is, you're great Australian larrikin behaviour right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All the stories came out when Keith Miller died. One of the ones was a kid was waiting outside the Australians' hotel where they were staying during the 48 tour or something. And all the Australians had left, and sometime afterwards, Keith, who'd done whatever the night before, ran out looking late and hurried, and he stopped to get his autograph, and he goes, "Hop in the cab with me." And so he took the cab to training. And
with a kid in it.
And brought the kid there, introduced him to all the Australian team.
And now that would be seen as kidnapping.
Yeah. That'd be an abduction. Yeah.
Let me stop to get a working with children check.
That was funny this year. Did you see the story about the Richmond players going out to a school to run a clinic, and they didn't have a working with children check? So the clinic got...
The whole thing was called off.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
And Dustin Martin's neck tattoos didn't put everyone at ease. And those kids were really looking forward to teaching those Tigers players a few things about pressure. But can you imagine that was the thing? They were suddenly
that's one of the things that one of my mottos with the series Utopia is stupidity is scalable. That you go, as we get smarter, the level of stupidity can rise to match our sophistication.
Yeah, and the AFL I always think are a good example of that. They are always, I'm always, when I watch Utopia, I always think of things in the AFL equivalent, because they're often a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. Yeah.
It's also stupidity is also proportional to the size of your head office.
Right. You think it's
and it's like one of my theories is like with television is the more crap the concept, the more lavish the production values. You know?
Right.
That's true.
I mean, you look at whether it's Real Housewives or Yummy Mummies or stuff
It's
like
shot
that.
beautifully.
The Bachelor, it is produced within an inch of its life.
Can I add to that, Serge? I reckon that, and the more worried you are about it, the more likely you are to add a swimming pool that someone falls into.
I think that's mandatory now in reality TV. I noticed
The
that.
other day. Man Oh Man was one, remember?
Man
The
Oh
Hole
Man.
in the Wall, that was all based around a pool.
Yes.
Almost Anything Goes. Splashdown, Celebrity Splashdown.
Celebrity Splashdown, I think Larry
That lasted
did
2
that one.
episodes, didn't it? That was really.
That was the celebrity dog walking one. I think.
No, the diving. That was the diving one. It
diving
lasted
one, yeah.
literally 2 episodes. I remember it was an
But
absolute.
Man Oh Man was huge when it came out.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
My favourite one of those celebrity reality TV shows was when they did Dancing on Ice on Channel 9.
Orville and Dean's dancing on.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and remember everyone got injured and they basically had
That's
to.
right. There were Achilles snapping.
It was like Survivor more
knees
than
going.
literally everyone, and not like falling into a pool. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've done my ACL.
You don't
Yeah.
walk away with calf soreness from ice skating.
You could just see they were trying to like get new celebrities to go in it, and they're all taking a look at it and
From
going,
memory, Stefanovic pulled that one, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. And I remember there was a blooper that wasn't shown widely as to one of the reasons it got axed is at one of the rehearsals. There was a celebrity, I don't know who, and there was a close-up of their hand on the ice and somebody skated past it within half an inch, which if closer would have taken 4 fingers off, which really would have been just fantastic if it had happened. But
think of the ratings.
Yeah.
hard to get the second series up though. So no, that's always amazing. The AFL always you must look at that and think, gee, there's a lot of satire there. There's a lot going on in sport that you could go.
Sadly, I take sport too seriously to muck around with it. But,
Not like politics or things like that.
no, because it's sort of politics. You only have to stand still for a week, and the BS falls apart. Whereas a lot of sporting organisations are quite good at covering their tracks.
Yeah.
Well, the AFL invests quite heavily in their cover-up unit. One of the great...
I don't think is that its a technical term?
well, they sit next to the integrity unit. And one of the issues...
They cross over a fair bit.
one of
Rotation policy.
Yeah, that's right. One of the issues they had a while back is they were funding the integrity unit too much.
Yeah.
In relation, you got to get the yin and the yang right. What do you think of Melbourne's chances at the moment, having gone through how the last 10 years before really the Ruse era? What were they like for you? How did you cope?
They were dark days. I got we were blessed with twins. I'm pointing out, and one of them turned to me and goes, "Dad, I really want to barrack for Hawthorn." And I said, "No, mate. Melbourne's on the golden
We're
period
coming.
coming up."
Yeah.
So what's Hawthorn won since that? I said that 4 premierships.
Yeah.
4 out of 5, yeah.
and we've got draft picks. So I declared, I reckon about 5 years ago, I no longer understand the modern game. Like, you know, when you were growing up, you thought just at the back of your mind that if Alistair Clarkson gave you a call, you'd be able to give him a couple of theories, pet theories about the spine and how you play the centre forward. But the modern game, I no longer
Really,
I don't.
It took me a fair while to, even though I thought I understood the game pretty well as a former player and observer, but it took me quite a while to work out the press. Everyone's talking about the forward press,
Yeah.
you know, the defensive press, and I couldn't quite work out what it was. But I wasn't going to ask anybody because you just sound really stupid. Because
you sound like every AFL journalist.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to do it in the introduction. You go with regard to pressure acts and kicking efficiency. Sweep that out of the way, and then ask what's the press.
So yeah, I mean the modern game is extremely difficult to follow. Although even this year with Melbourne doing the running off the half back line at the centre bounces, that's something new, which again I hadn't even noticed till somebody pointed it out.
The one thing I still hold to is that on-field generals matter.
Yeah.
So when Jordan Lewis came across, I went that.
Yeah.
As a fellow Melbourne follower,
Yeah.
Serge, that's a big thing. We haven't had one of those for a long time.
That was the thing I thought exactly that when it was announced. I thought he'll be more than handy on the field as a player, but where we'll really get value out of him is his, not only as a general, but as a teacher to your blokes like Viney and Tyson and Petrarca and kids like this.
Just being able to hold the kids' hands through the tribunal process has been incredibly
Jordan
valuable.
got there first.
Yeah, that's right. It's got to the point of it with Melbourne where you look at it and you go, when, it was so terrible for so long. And then, and Serge and I used to get pretty depressed about it because we lived vicariously through it. And and then suddenly, not only were we no good on the field, but you probably experienced this where in Melbourne especially, where who do you back for is sort of like, that's the religious question you get asked. Sure. It's and you say Melbourne and everyone would say, I think you guys are going to start to turn the corner. Like there was never any animosity if you were a Melbourne supporter. It was pity all the way.
Yeah, and I want to be hated again.
And now it feels like with Clayton Oliver and
Jaden Hunt
and even Jesse hitting and Bug, suddenly you feel like it is a different thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Viney, you don't want to.
He's as hard as a cat's head. That kid, he's a beauty. I saw him this morning. He's just had his plantar fascia operated on and with bolts put in. And he goes, I'll be back by the Port Adelaide game, which is about 3 weeks earlier than probably should.
The medical advice.
Yeah, he'd play with the bolts in his foot, possibly.
That's Saturday week, isn't it?
Yeah. So I doubt whether that'll happen. But he's the sort of young leader and hard nut that we haven't had, probably since he's old man almost.
Yeah. It's been forever. Yeah. I mean, I look at Clayton Oliver. He's a genuine superstar. I mean, he seems to be going over the way to also antagonise every supporter group. What do you think of his apology to the Carlton supporter?
Now, seriously, that's mad, isn't it? When should seriously, where do you think the seesaw was?
Oh.
You reckon a bloke on the other side, having just consumed 42 pies and probably a frothy as well, you reckon he was quoting poetry at him?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
I know. And he did touch him and that was light. But to me it was, we were saying this.
Harden up, everyone.
It was like he said something stupid he shouldn't have said. Clayton then said something. That cancels each other out if it's a mathematics equation. And then the apology was so vague. Kind of just, it was that.
Apologies weren't required by anyone. Just get on with it.
I was hoping Clayton would, in his apology, would say, I'm sorry you're a Carlton supporter. That should have been the whole thing.
If I've offended anyone,
there's a template to be written of the sporting apology, basically. It's but it is, mate, because this guy was like a 40-year-old man too, demanding an apology
from a teenager.
Yeah, from a 19-year-old. Pasty-faced redhead playing footy, Oh, I don't know. Now, Rob, we need to talk about Utopia, the new series.
Yes.
Starts next Wednesday, the 19th of July, at 9 p.m. on the ABC.
Exactly.
Now, we've been privileged to watch a couple of episodes, Titus and I.
Of the new series,
and it's as good as ever, if not better. Now, I read somewhere someone always describes, or journos often describe Utopia as storylines ripped from today's headlines. How do you go about finding your storylines and turning them into the show?
The irony is that the minute it hits the headlines, we drop it as a story because there's nothing fresh in it. You know? And one of the problems we've had is that often the stories that break are too bizarre. Like truth is stranger than fiction, and you can't. It seems like you animate that and it looks like a pantomime. So we often will be chatting to somebody just and someone as a side remark. We were talking to a friend in construction, and he said, "Oh, look, I've got nothing to tell you guys. I mean, it's just very boring industry and all that." And half an hour in, he goes, "Oh, all developers just want height. That's all." And I go, "What?" "Oh, that's all we're after." All the alleys and all this crap and talk and rooftop gardens. That's all furphy. We just want height, and that's an episode.
There you go. Yeah.
And so then all we do is we stand still for a while and just watch the articles come out. And you watch all these developers try to cover their tracks. We're going to activate the streetscape, and it's going to be 7-star building, and hopefully we'll get 80 stories.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
How often have you've been working on an episode and then something similar has happened and you've gone, we've got to change this?
I'm trying to think if this series was a bit of that. I was really into energy policy over the last 18 months and sort of did my own little Finkel report. And we were going to shoot up at the Snowy at one of the big power stations. And one of the things that, this is sort of just in general, you don't make that much money from just selling baseload hydroelectricity. You make it from selling contracts and you at peak pricing, and it's got more in common with a Wall Street credit default swap than it does with
it's like junk bonds.
with the Orlon power station. And I was looking at it and I was going, it's a bit indistinct, and I can't nail it down to one thing. And thank God we didn't, because when they announced that Snowy 2.0, and I'm going, that is the most insane. Why did we swallow that?
Yeah.
That is people. I still have to stop and explain to people that's not hydroelectricity. That's coal-fired, coal power, electricity pumped down there to pump the water up in order to convert it into hydroelectricity. It's not hydro. And they're walking around, the Snowy, isn't it?
Snowy,
2.0.
Bringing it back.
I know. You are missing the 2.0 in there, because that just sold me.
Well, that's the other thing is that governments get naming rights. It's like stadiums.
But how bad's 2.0 when they had that iSnack 2.0? Remember that?
What was that one?
That was the Vegemite. They renamed the Vegemite spread with some cheese in it.
iSnack
And they said, we've had an exhaustive... And they've named it Cheesy Mite.
Oh my
But
God.
it was exactly that. So when I saw they were doing it, because they pitched the I from iPad and then had to have the 2.0.
Everything has to have an eye in front.
But Turnbull came up with, he ripped one of his slogans
I think
straight from Veep, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, that continuity with change.
Yeah.
But I think he also used the phrase nation building in one of his press conferences. This is a perfect example of nation building at its finest.
Well, what happens is that it's a bit like, remember when it was Honest John, about John Howard, that was used sarcastically, but it gets used so much, they use it as a bit of branding.
Yeah.
And so I think if they were guilty of one thing, it's elevating the word infrastructure to be used so often that now you can actually suck the juice out of it now for good rather than evil, or vice versa. So it's that sort of thing that they latch on to slogans very quickly. And you've got to, that slogan, was that thing about a myth goes around the world before the truth gets out of bed. And so slogans are, like the NBN. I'd hate to take on technology now because technology moves so fast. I read a book over the recent holidays about the invention of the iPhone called The One Device. Very good book. And spoiler alert, this relates to the last chapter. He said when he interviewed everybody involved in creating the iPhone, and it was an amazing achievement, he said they all expressed one emotion after it all. And you'd have 50 goes, you wouldn't get it. It's ambivalence.
Really?
Yeah, and he dug down on it. He said, why is that? He goes, because technology gets usurped. So today's iPhone quickly becomes, an Atari 64 or something.
Yes.
And I think that's true about all aspects of technology, is that it moves so fast. Like the NBN,
the NBN is a perfect example. I mean, remember when it was first announced, when Rudd and Conroy announced it, remember thinking, gee, apart from the 43 billion, by the time they roll this out or ever actually do it, surely there'll be a better way to communicate than the NBN.
Well, I used to tell the story that we renovated and about 10, 15 years ago, and the guy who was doing the wiring came in with a very expensive, big, thick blue cable. Said, look, take the hit now, but I'm telling you, in 10 years, you'll be thankful that you've got optical fibre all through the house. And the week after they invented Wi-Fi, we have never used 1 metre of that cable.
You still got a big nice blue cable hanging out of a little hole in the wall.
You could turn our house into a TV studio. It's that wired. It's funny thing was people keep saying the iPhone's got as much power as the Apollo 11 command module. That is just completely misleading. The command module had around 10,000 transistors. The current chip that they're putting in the iPhone 7's got 3 billion.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even in the same ballpark.
Yeah. And we use it for great things too, our iPhones, like streaming the footy when you're at a dinner party. No one's actually...
We found more... It was someone say we found new and sophisticated, faster ways to download porn.
Well, it's porn and gambling seem to be the two things that you make money.
One of the guys in the iPhone, this iPhone book said he holds 2 records. One he's not so proud of. He was the first person to surf porn on an iPhone.
For work-related purposes, wasn't
testing,
it? For testing.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Just to check, how high definition the flex tones are. Yeah. Now, Rob, you mentioned how politicians and people like that use the slogans. In Utopia, that is shown so well, particularly with, and I'll get back to casting, how well you cast these programs, but Lemo's character, Jim. Is Jim the most frustrating, annoying character almost in the history of TV, in that you watch him and you want to throttle him or punch the TV, but boy, does Jim like a slogan.
Absolutely loves it. He's someone, a friend of mine years ago described someone as someone who's never experienced pain in their lives. And that is, that idea that they cause pain, they don't suffer it.
Yeah.
And my favourite moment in the second series was Tom Gleisner, who one of the writers, we came up with the Healthy Heart Week. The offices are always got some week going on. And a lady came in and was doing free blood pressure tests, but she took my blood pressure as Jim was talking to me.
you just see it rise.
That's right. But his blood pressure was really good.
Yeah.
And so that's that. I think that's. I think when you live in announcements, not execution, I think there's salvation is only 24 hours away.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I find with a lot of people when you talk to them about what they'd like to do for a job, and you see it in sporting clubs, you see it in business and see it in government. They say, I'd like to be more strategic. And what they really mean is, I want to go to meetings and give my opinion on things and then leave.
But not have to follow it.
No, there's no connection to action. That to me seems to be what a lot of these...
That thought bubble world is really, we do a, have you guys seen Smart Cities, the Smart Cities conference? No, okay, so it's all about, I get dragged into being a keynote speaker.
Oh, yes, I have seen it. Yeah, I have seen it, yeah.
And it's all that distractibility. That's the other thing that I like. He sort of, every time we come up with an idea that surrounds distractibility, we give it to him.
To Jim. Yeah.
Because those guys, in a way, have to keep delivering something that'll land, will drop, slices off a loaf. You know all these.
Yeah. They've got to have the key. It's cut through.
Yeah, it cuts through.
It
lands, all that stuff, and so therefore, some very smart person in Melbourne once said that, you don't remember the old commander systems, with the 6 or the 8 flashing lights?
Yeah.
He said, if you're in talkback radio, those lights train you eventually like Pavlov's dogs. Right. Do you know what I mean? You start using adjectives that make the lights flash on, and you start, over a period of a year or two, you find you're posing the question, the talkback topic, shifts from something thoughtful and policy driven to inflammatory.
Yeah, something that instantly is going to... we've got a full board of calls.
Because I said Muslims and followed by...
I have a family member who in a bygone time, in the evening talkback, used to call up and he used the hot button words like... I've got the hello, Reverend. I remember Alex Kenworthy was We've just got this military news place, and we've got this thing called a combustion stove, and I don't. Well, every person who grew up with a combustion stove would. And he'd go, now, no more calls on the combustion stove.
What have our listeners wrote in about the Basher Hawley case? Said that was the perfect talkback bingo topic because you had AFL. You had a Richmond player, you had a Basher Hawley, but Muslim, then you had Waleed Ali giving a character reference, and then you had Malcolm Turnbull. And so it's just like across the board, you could not have...
Covered,
yeah, it was just everything, single thing was like tick, tick, tick. And did you find it strange when we had that one, and then we had Thomas Bugg come out the very next week?
Hey, don't mention the war. Hang on, Bugg gets 6.
Yeah.
Hang on, who? What? Hang on, where was the GST added there?
Well, he got two weeks of stupidity of following the Basher after the whole week of media, I think. The AFL went, you didn't get the message. And then we had Ali Fahul come out and hit someone. And I was saying to Serge the other day, is it like we're in this competition of who can do the stupidest thing, and they all keep trying to... And then Danny Green came out, the boxer, who is the face of a... This you couldn't put in your show. It's one of those examples of it's too stupid to be real.
You couldn't believe it.
Danny Green, so he's spent a fair bit of money and is the face of a one hit can kill campaign.
Anti-coward
punch campaign. And he came out and said, Thomas Bugg's hit wasn't that serious. Callum Mills just got a weak jaw, obviously.
He's a glass jaw, yeah.
You can't take the boxer.
Danny.
Let's reread those talking points.
And I was just going, is this the stupidest now? And then we had the Ali Fahul came out and did his thing, and I thought, well, we can't top this. Then we had Vickery and Jake King come out. And I'm just trying to think of, are we
what's going to happen this week? What could happen in rural round?
I'd love to be a president of an AFL club just long enough to get one of those 4 a.m. calls. You know that?
Yeah.
Because they don't come in during business hours.
No, never.
They come in at 4 and he goes, this is going to be in the papers. This is going to be on radio in about an hour and a half. Just thought I'd let you know.
Well, I'll tell you this story. My old man was the CEO at St Kilda back in the 80s, and he used to say...
That's hitting all, but that's hitting.
He used to say,
the board's just lit up.
I'd go to the safe, take a wad of notes out there, go home, and I wouldn't go out Saturday night because without shadow of a doubt, I'd get a call from the Moorabbin police, always after midnight, and I'd have to pop round there and bail someone out. Can't say anymore, but...
Every weekend.
Probably every second or third weekend.
He carried bail money with him.
Cash
because this was
with him to either...
Carries bail money.
He carried bail money.
That's a sign of an interesting job. You leave Friday with bail money.
Yeah, to bail out his footballers so they could play.
But was it bailing off or paying off the police?
Well, there was a bit of both.
Right.
There was occasionally a couple of hundreds get peeled off to... a couple of
thanks for keeping this amongst
uniform
us.
Boys,
even they say there's a golden era.
Yeah.
I don't know what the opposite of that is, but the cubic zirconia area of AFL when with the presidents we went through. Bond was president of Richmond.
Oh yeah.
St Kilda had a bit of a rotation policy.
Yeah, there was
Lindsay Fox.
That's how my old man got involved. Foxy was the president. There was Bond at Richmond.
Well, think about this. At one point, the VFL
Jason
had
Gutnick.
Well, but didn't he?
That was a bit later.
He came with sponsorship though. Didn't
he came,
and his own money as well.
He put his hand into his own pocket.
Yeah. No, I remember the VFL, like my favourite thing, and this shows the early VFL's business nous. At one point, they were in business with. In Skase at the Bears, Edelston in Sydney, and then Fitzroy had Nauru as their owner.
That's right.
Remember, the island of Nauru was the major debtor for Fitzroy, and that's why they ended up in Brisbane, because the island of Nauru. And so...
Okay,
the club built on guano.
So what was the name of the hardware guy up in Brisbane?
Reuben... someone. I was going to say Reuben Kincaid, but that was the Partridge family.
What, who owned Brisbane or who? Because Paul Cronin ran the...
he was CEO for... But I've got Frank Penhalierick in my head, but that was the guy that took on Sunday Trade.
Yeah, he was jailed by John Cain for selling hammers on a Sunday.
He was a freedom fighter in every sense of the word. But was this up in the Brisbane Bears?
I reckon there was a Reuben involved.
Yeah, it was a... It was the early years.
Yeah, it was very early. It was the Bears when they were the Bears.
Bears and maybe Knights.
Yeah,
It was
Peter
Knights,
Knights
Cronin,
was
and
Reuben Perlman.
Reuben Perlman.
Your spine was Knights, Cronin, Perlman.
Yeah, that was it.
They were two.
And Skase, was he a president of the club for a while too?
Yeah, no, he had because the AFL sold. The AFL had a great VFL/AFL. They had a great business model going for a while. It happened 3 or 4, I think 3 times, where they sold the licenses for between $4 and $6 million, and then got them back for. They got Edelson's back for $10,
Right?
Because he just, and then they got. Brisbane's back for free after when Skase went bankrupt. Because he went bankrupt, it came back to them. So they just, and then they sold it again to another. So
that was when Edelston was there. The underbidder or the loser was Basil Sellers, who was a serious. It was like you could have got Obama, but you got Trump. And
and Edelston was only there about a year. So we look back at it and think there was this, big long Edelston era. But Edelston was there. He surprisingly, you'd be surprised this, but he wasn't the most stable person at running a football club.
And I'll tell, I met him years ago, and one thing he said that annoys him about people talking about his, let's call it an era at the Swans, and you could name anything, but the thing that annoys him most, he said, there was never a pink helicopter. He said there was a helicopter, but it wasn't pink. And it really annoys him that people think there was a pink helicopter.
That's his legacy issue that he defends.
I remember saying, Jeff, but there's probably more things than that. Nah, there was never a pink helicopter.
There's a great YouTube video of Edelston at his first game, and Peter Donegan is the sports reporter interviewing him, and and it's him and John Elliott, because it was at a Carlton match, both chatting about the success of the VFL and all this stuff, and you watch it and you just go, this is very different watching it 30 years later.
It does sort of demonstrate Showman's got a lot of power.
We still remember him.
But to get crowds and people want a show.
Oh yeah.
And that, Trump's an example of that. He's to his bones is a showman.
Yeah, he's a performer. Yeah,
he'll say anything too to get that showmanship. Like it's all about. He knows what to. He's got an instinct to what to say to get the reaction.
Well, he's another one of those guys. I think is that they cause pain, they don't suffer pain.
Well, I think isn't a difficult person just someone who makes you react to them.
Yeah.
That is at its heart a difficult person. And I often think this if in my life I've long thought that is what is a difficult person. And of course I try not to leave the house so I don't run into this, but this is a problem. But I always think sometimes someone will be complaining about someone they know and they'll say, then they do this. And I say, yeah, so they're a difficult person. They're making you react to them.
Right. So there's a term for that and used by fighter pilots.
Right.
Getting inside your Uber loop or something.
Right.
A German term for dominating another fighter plane by making them react to your moves or something.
Right, rather than the other way.
Yeah.
And so I always say with a difficult person, you either ignore them completely and cut them out of your life, which some people say, well, I can't do that being my husband or mother-in-law or something. I say, well, the only other way to deal with a difficult person is you have to be more difficult to them. You have to start making them react to you because otherwise you're just trapped forever in the loop. We need to find that name because I might start using that.
No, it's definite. It's got now, where did I have someone? Yeah, it's definite. If you look up fighter plane tactics and there's something
it'll
loop,
be there.
it'll be there.
The something loop. Oh, I'm keen on this because that could be how people could describe their relationships with people.
Yeah. No, it's
and Trump is that with them.
Well, this as it was explained on whatever I was listening to or reading, he is the absolute poster boy for this loop.
Right. Because it is amazing how well he's basically just, with one tweet, just derails the whole media. And they can't... The thing where you're spot on about is, and we all do this, we know what he's doing, which is what the great tricksters do.
Yeah.
Even when you know exactly what he's doing.
He's disintermediating.
That's right.
He's not disrupting. He's got the...
You still go for it, don't you?
Bypassed Twitter. He's nuclearized, or whatever you call it, weaponized.
Weaponized. Yeah.
Twitter. It's amazing, isn't it? He sets the agenda. He's just absolutely... headline writers must be sitting going, how did I lose my job?
He has destroyed satire, though, in America. You can't...
No, because it's sort of... You know when there's a two-way mirror and the other person doesn't know, you can actually see what he's doing. He doesn't care.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Let's take a break. I'm busting for a long time.
It's around the corner?
Round.
Yeah. I'm just going to put some hot water.
Now I found the loop. It's the OODA loop. OODA.
Oh, it's an acronym.
It's an acronym. Observe, orient, decide, and act. And it's about what you say. It's about all making someone basically observe them, make them react to you.
Yes.
So observe,
orient, decide, and act. It was developed by a military strategist. My favourite bit, I'm just going to find this one of...
that'll be on Alistair Clarkson's whiteboard next week.
It explains the nature of surprise and shaping operations in a way that unifies, and I've often said this to you, Serge, I just didn't know the term, Gestalt psychology, cognitive science, and game theory. Gee, if there's not a day that goes by where you don't go on and on about Gestalt psychology.
I reckon there's a bit
that is my life, yeah.
There's another technique that your good Aussie bloke sometimes does, which is by using very few syllables. My brother was up at running along the beach at Broome a couple of weeks ago, and they had the races up there, so a lot of racehorses, and one of the trainers was down there, exercising them on the beach, and one of the horses got away from him. Now, if you've ever been to Broome, that's a long beach.
That's a fair beach, yeah.
Not naturally self-contained. And he saw this trainer running after this horse came down, went past them, and then the trainer, 300 metres behind, running down the beach. And as he went past, he went, yeah, not ideal. Now, I don't know about you. I'd be going, I'd be yabbering and explaining.
Swearing away or something.
Yeah, not ideal.
Not ideal. Yeah.
That is the Australian, the massive understatement.
Actually, understatement may well be an OODA loop thing.
Yeah, it's not... It's that thing of not letting anyone sort of... It's saying a lot by not saying a lot, and so you leave the floor back to you sort of give the floor back to them very quickly,
so
but letting them know that you're not that impressed.
That's right. Speaking of fighter planes, during the Falklands, I think the Harriers worked this trick rather than trying to use speed and manoeuvrability with those jets that let them land. They used to flip them around and jack on the jets, and literally they're pulling on the handbrake, and the Argentinian Mirages would go straight past them.
the whole handbrake turn.
I tell you what, there's a podcast just crying out here that we should launch, which is fighter pilot techniques.
Yeah.
How they can apply to your life.
Yeah. It's when you look them up. In fact, when I was looking up that OODA loop thing, I started looking up the tactics and looking at how they do those loops and how they... Because most engagements is nose to nose. It's
right.
A lot of our images is
the Top Gun
chasing each other.
Chasing, but a lot of it's just
sort of heading at each other.
Yeah, approach. And then I was talking to an F-18 pilot one day, and I fully thought that that dogfights would be at supersonic, Mach 2, but they dropped back to 300 or 350 knots or something like that.
Because otherwise they'd never see each other, I suppose, if you're going much faster than that.
I'm creating so much trouble for you guys, aren't you? Your email's going to be, well, I'm a F-18 pilot. That's we never use it.
Serge, you were going to mention your...
Well, Rob, you decades of producing and creating some of Australia's most loved and greatest TV shows and films. Where do you see the trend now in TV? Any trends that are obvious to you?
Apart from swimming pools.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
reality TV. So reality's here to stay.
Yeah.
So free to air, what do you say? You'd say sport. Totally. That's just the bedrock of free to air. News, reality, and then next big thing from somewhere in the world.
Yeah, scripted shows are sort of not on the way out, but gee, they're certainly.
Well, I was sort of joking about this the other day. I was sort of being interviewed about Utopia, and I was saying for anyone under 20, you'll need to obtain what's called a television, and and this is unhackable. You actually have to wait for a specific time to watch it. And at the end of the show, you can't get to watch the rest of the series. You have to keep waiting week by week.
Until the following week.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to come as a shock to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It is. It's just streaming now. Like, I know a lot of people that would never watch anything shown in an actual time slot.
No, I got annoyed. I got into Silicon Valley. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah, that's a great show.
I really enjoyed it. And this new series came out, and I go, what? What? What do you mean I've got to wait another week for?
Yeah.
This is outrageous.
But the funny thing is, I still, we watch free. As I said, I'm the legal custodian of two 10-year-old twins, and I've seen them. Like that Sixth Sense where I see dead people.
Yeah.
They've got the reverse. They don't see televisions. They just walk straight. Yeah. They do not, unless it comes off an Apple iPad. The thought of stopping and sitting down and
in the one spot or not at the time you're choosing.
Yeah, it's just totally foreign to them.
So that thing of just flicking around, that's almost dead.
Nobody flicks around. Kids don't.
They just watch what they want to watch.
My 12-year-old just sees the big TV in the corner as another device.
Yes.
And like just recently, the other week, he was watching something which I thought, you can't get that on Foxtel. It's not on Netflix. I know it's certainly not on free-to-air. I said, where'd you get this from? And he said, it's an illegal website I'm watching through YouTube. Really? Is that right? He said, yeah, it's sort of behind YouTube. It's an illegal website. So I said,
dark web.
We're going to get raided here?
He said, I've also accidentally ordered several tons of ice.
Yeah.
I'm so old school. You used to have to go to Bali and get an illegal copy.
Yeah. How much though do you know? Like what amount of people would watch Utopia on iView rather than live? Is it substantial?
Yeah, it is. It is. Well. The iView has been a massive. Well, that was the way iView was streaming before the word was.
Because I watch all of Utopia on iView.
Yeah,
I've never watched it in its time slot, but I watch it each week. But it's that thing.
Yeah,
it's just how you. Yeah, I can change that now. But you know what I mean? Like that's the.
So now I think sort of our sense of ratings has got much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's quite official in America. Is the
stream
+7 plus this plus they've got a figure for it. So we, in rough terms, whatever the night free to air amount was, you doubled it for the repeat, the streaming, the time shifted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's looking at who watched it on, at the time, is becoming increasingly like not that important. I would imagine.
No, I mean more so now. Well, some things it's very interesting to look up time shifted stuff. Dramas are massively time shifted.
Yeah.
And sort of it's almost it's the mark of how much someone likes your show. If you look at your show and you see it, 2000, you go, Jesus, no one minds if they miss our show. But I think with iView, ABC got on to that effectively streaming. Right,
they were pretty soon onto that, weren't they?
And it occurred just when we had enough bandwidth to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could actually. It wouldn't take you half an hour to watch 5 minutes.
No, we weren't looking at that sort of multicoloured donut circling in front of you.
Well, the AFL streaming now is pretty good, over the phone, and you don't have to interact with people when you're out socially at all anymore. It's a wonderful development.
Well, the great thing for the AFL is you basically. You go over to America and see what the NFL
doing. Yeah. Now, Rob, we mentioned briefly about casting with Utopia before, and we mentioned Limo, how good he is with Jim. One of the things you seem to have done with all the series is not just put, let's call them actors in roles, but funny people. Even though they're not performing over the top as stand-up comedians, but there seems to be a thing that, and it seems fairly obvious to the outside, but I don't think anyone's really done it before, is that if you want a funny show, why not use funny people?
That's true.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only pushback I get is from the comedian themselves. And so with our writing, the most important thing we need from the actor is the understanding of what the funny bit is, because everyone in our show, almost that style of acting in Utopia is that no one realises that anything silly is going on. So to do that, you've got to know where the silliness is and understand why it's silly and how to deliver it so it's truly silly. So someone like Limo's a very, very good example, is that he's got the bit that we need.
Yeah.
And so I sort of say to them, let me worry about everything else.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes people go, oh God, I'm so inexperienced, and you get used to a set pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And as long as you realise you get a few goes at it. And I also find that I can use the language that comedians understand.
Yeah.
So they get up to speed pretty quickly.
Yeah. And you see someone like Celia, who she can deliver disdain and disappointment with the one look so magnificently.
Yes.
And then Kitty Flanagan, who she only has to appear on camera and I start laughing. I mean, you put together an ensemble that's as good as ever been, really.
This series is probably my favourite thing of this series is that we, for some reason, found Kitty really easy to write in the series. And one of the reasons is we just upped her disdain with everybody. So it was like everyone at that office is starting to get on her nerves. And someone pointed out to me what's really modern about the show is that finally we've got a series where professional women are driving each other mad.
I noticed in one of the early episodes I have seen from this series that Rhonda actually is treating Tony with absolute disdain.
Absolute.
Not the slightest bit of respect for the position or the person.
With your bloody blah. I'm not listening.
Yeah.
And I think she writes it. That's right. She gets my resignation. I don't realise it's my resignation.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, we're not going to accept it." She's got that hard nut that you associate with a tough bloke.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is that character in that world where everything for them, they've got 2 minutes to deal with it until the next crisis, so they don't have time for the niceties.
No, and what's lovely about their experience is that in real life, they're completely different from that. That they don't operate in offices but people walking down the street, women who have been driven mad by another woman, will stop them and say, oh, "I'm you."
Yeah.
Or, "I deal with someone like you."
Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on. Really appreciate making the time, and we're looking forward to Utopia coming back next week. So that's Wednesday 9 p.m.
9 p.m.
Don't watch it on iView, watch it live.
Wednesday next week, 19th of July.
If you're a hacker, it's whenever you want.
Yeah.
Don't go to Serge's secret YouTube channel.
If you want to watch it on the dark web, just give me a call.
Bring your son.
And, good luck, Melbourne. What do you think the rest of the year is going to hold for us?
But we've got a hard spine now. And so I go, if injuries favour us, we can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah. I'm not good with dealing with being happy. I'm not used to it.
No.
Expectations aren't good for Melbourne supporters.
No, it's weird. I went. I'll leave you with this. I went to a friend of mine, Barracks for Hawthorn, and in '88 we said, "Look, we've got to go together."
Yeah.
And 5 minutes in, he looked at me, turned to me and looked at me. You know when it's like someone's read you've got an E and you don't know your report card yet? He gave me that full on, and we lost by a record margin.
Yeah.
And what was wonderful is that 12 years later in 2000, he joined me and was able to see that record broken.
Yeah.
I remember the 2000 sitting next to an Essendon fan watching it at home.
Yeah.
And about 5 minutes into the first quarter, he looked at me and went, "I'll get you a beer, mate." Yeah. That's all he said. He was like...
And that's my one fear if we ever make a grand final again.
Oh.
No more records.
No.
Well, on that note, we'll be back next Monday,
we will
wrapping up
indeed.
another round. And everyone, just finishing off that our tour is selling. There's some scalpers selling tickets.
There is
One guy put it up for $300, which is just ridiculous. But if you want to get a ticket, just go to the Frontier Touring comedy site and you can get them all there. There's tickets
Sure,
for
they
each
didn't
show.
have McCartney written on it.
That was the hilarious thing. Someone rang me in panic and goes, there's one of your tickets is on sale on via something. And
I hope you got a screen grab of it.
I do. Yeah. No, they said, you've got to tell people not to buy it. And I said, I don't reckon anyone's buying it.
Hey,
Like, I'm flattered.
supply and demand.
So, but thanks, everyone. We are selling out. Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, almost sold out. So if you want to come, get on quickly. And we will see you next week.